Welcome to Idlewild Cottage, a quiet place where kindred spirits can linger together over a cup of tea, savoring all things lovely and cozy. My name is Juliana, and I'm delighted to have you. Each episode here at the cottage will center around a theme. That theme will be celebrated in a number of ways, through literature, art, nature, and even some favorite movie scenes. We'll cherish the sweet and simple things of life. So make yourself at home, and I'll put the kettle on. In her 1948 book of Stillmeadow, Gladys Tabor wrote, "The deep part of winter gives most of us a little more time alone. The natural rhythm of time has changed. But instead of dreading the dark winter days, we ought to savor them for what they can give. Now there should be time to reread old books, to absorb some philosophy, to play a whole symphony without hurrying." If you are a regular visitor to Idlewild Cottage, either through the podcast or Instagram, you know that I took some time away for a season of what I've been referring to as gentle wintering. The term wintering has surfaced in recent years and reminds us that just as the earth embraces a season of dormancy every year, so our hearts, minds, and bodies may need more rest and quiet in the winter months, especially after the steady whir and hum of fall activity and holiday merriment. As Tabor reminds us, the natural rhythm of time has changed. So, how do we savor that rhythm? Over the course of 2 episodes, I'll be sharing a few of my wintering activities with you, connecting them to excerpts from the stories and movies we have grown to know and love together here at Idlewild Cottage. Today's episode will focus on tending more toward the mind and heart, while part 2, coming up in 2 weeks, will shift outward toward activities of a more physical, social nature. Now, as with all seasons of life, they do continue to shift. And friends, I happen to find myself in a season of unexpected change and busyness. My family and I are well, but I have been increasingly aware that sustaining this podcast isn't something I am able to do, at least for now. And so, with warmth and gratitude for this dear community, I share these final wintering episodes with you in the hope that a future season might draw us together once again. The first and most natural rhythm for me to turn to during my season of wintering was to our home library. Now, my reading is often connected with output and productivity in some measure, creating content as I do here on the podcast or through Instagram, so it was a gentleness to my mind and heart to read simply for pleasure. Jo March knows a thing or two about the welcome refuge of books. In a familiar winter setting from Little Women, Meg is searching about the house for her sister. "Jo, where are you?" cried Meg at the foot of the garret stairs. "Here," answered a husky voice from above. And running up, Meg found her sister eating apples and crying over the heir of Redcliffe, wrapped up in a comforter on an old 3-legged sofa by the sunny window. This was Jo's favorite refuge, and here she loved to retire with 6 russets and a nice book, to enjoy the quiet and the society of a pet rat who lived nearby and didn't mind her a particle. As Meg appeared, Scrabble whisked into his hole. Jo shook the tears off her cheeks and waited to hear the news. After Meg shares news of the upcoming dance, we read that Jo returns to her refuge where she promptly finishes her story, her 4 apples, and a game of romps with Scrabble. Elizabeth Bennet seeks refuge in books too, in the entertaining Netherfield scene from the 1995 film Pride and Prejudice. Elizabeth has journeyed to Netherfield to be with Jane, who has fallen ill. The uncomfortable result is that Elizabeth must spend more time than she'd like with Miss Bingley and Mr. Darcy. On her first evening at Netherfield, Elizabeth is absorbed in a book while the others play cards. Miss Bingley teases, Miss Bennet despises cards. She's a great reader and has no pleasure in anything else. Amid snickers and a conversation that veers toward the accomplished woman, Mr. Darcy dryly interjects that a truly accomplished woman must have something more substantial in the improvement of her mind by extensive reading. Another wintering activity that brought me pleasure was journaling. Now, I already journal pretty regularly, particularly as a part of my morning Bible reading. Yet my time is often limited. The winter pause gave me time for deeper reflection. I invited my mind and heart to spill out across more pages than usual, precisely as Betsy Ray often does. The opening pages of Betsy in Spite of Herself find Betsy doing just that. An avid reader and writer, it's not surprising that journaling is a life-giving outlet for one of our favorite chums. Chapter 1 begins. Just a few lines to open the record of my sophomore year. Isn't it mysterious to begin a new journal like this? I can run my fingers through the fresh, clean pages, but I cannot guess what the writing on them will be. It is almost as though I were ushered into the winding hall of fate, but next day's destiny was hidden behind a turning. Betsy paused and read what she had written with a dreamy, self-satisfied smile. She was curled up on a pillow beside her Uncle Keith's trunk, which she used as a desk. It stood in her bedroom, a large blue and white room with 2 windows in which white curtains were blowing. The time was September 1907, and next day she would be a sophomore in the Deep Valley, Minnesota High School. Anne Shirley, though not necessarily given to journaling, is likewise an avid reader and writer. As with many of our dear heroines, it does take Anne some time and experience to descend from lofty plots and dramatic dialogue, or, as Gilbert would call it, highfalutin mumbo-jumbo. I love the opening scene from the 1987 miniseries, Anne of Avonlea. Anne has ridden her bike to the seashore, seeking out a solitary place to dream and work on her story. Overlooking the waves, with the wind blowing through her fantastic auburn Gibson girl updo, she quotes, "Where is sleep? Over the mountains of the moon, down the valley of the shadow, beneath the waves of the deep Gulf Stream, replied the handsome Duke in dark, languid tones." Anne's inspiration continues, and she scrambles down the bank to put her thoughts to paper. In dark, languid tones. In dark, foreboding tones. Anne scribbles on. He fervently stroked her alabaster brow. She fell under his cloak of darkness. Anne is swept away by her own drama. She falls back onto the sand in romantic raptures, little knowing that, page by page, her story is blowing away across the sands and eventually toward the mysterious Morgan Harris. Music represents today's final wintering activity. Now, in my case, I most enjoy listening to music, not so much creating it. I love it when my daughter sits down at the piano and sweeps me into Cristofori's Dream, and am highly entertained on the rare occasions when my son unexpectedly whips out the melodica. Music enhances the atmosphere for me, so I especially enjoy putting together seasonal playlists. My winter playlist, called Where Winter Waits, is filled with gentle instrumental pieces, suited to the hush and introspection of this time of year. I'll include a link in the show notes. The title of this playlist is taken from the poem Old Year Leaves by H.T. Mackenzie Bell. I'll share the first several lines. As I do so, let's circle around the parlor here at the cottage. I'll pour out a Harney & Sons Darjeeling, a gift from my son, that has been an especially warm and cozy tea throughout these winter weeks. The leaves which in the autumn of the year fall auburn-tinted, leaving reft and bare their parent trees in many a sheltered lair where winter waits and watches, cold, austere, will lie in drifts, and when the snowdrops cheer the woodland shadows, still the leaves are there. Music means a great deal to Beth March, too, and we first hear of her quiet burden early on in Little Women. Beth had her troubles as well as the others, and not being an angel but a very human little girl, she often wept a little weep, as Jo said, because she couldn't take music lessons and have a fine piano. She loved music so dearly, tried so hard to learn, and practiced away so patiently at the jingling old instrument that it did seem as if someone, not to hint Aunt March, ought to help her. Nobody did, however, and nobody saw Beth wipe the tears off the yellow keys that wouldn't keep in tune when she was all alone. She sang like a little lark about her work, never was too tired for Marmee and the girls, and day after day said hopefully to herself, "I know I'll get my music sometime." Dear Beth, she does get her music, and she overcomes her fears and gains a true friend in the process, too. I really enjoy the role the piano plays in a number of films, especially those set in the first decade of the 1900s. For example, how much do we love it when little Amaryllis proudly practices her crosshand piece in The Music Man? And what a delight it is to laugh along with the Carey family in the movie Summer Magic, as Gilly pounds away at the piano, singing The Pink of Perfection with his sister. The Smith family entertains us with piano numbers throughout the seasons of Meet Me in St. Louis, and Marjorie Winfield brings a laugh every time she races through Be My Little Baby Bumblebee with poor Chester in the Doris Day Delight by the light of the silvery moon. In closing, and in keeping with the music theme, I'd like to share a psalm that has blessed me in these recent wintering days. Psalm 96:1 reminds us to sing to the Lord a new song. Sing to the Lord, all the earth. Friends, what might our new song sound like as we invite the slowness of winter to give us space for quiet, for listening, for reflection? For such seasons do give us new perspective, new appreciation for that which is behind and that which is to come. This, in turn, produces a new song in our lives, a song of gratitude, a song of joy, a song of appreciation for the quiet, unexpected fruits of winter. Thank you for joining me today, dear ones. Please come again soon to Idlewild Cottage.